I'm Cassie Pekarsky, Director of Strategic Initiatives for the Truman Library Institute. It is my pleasure to welcome everyone in person and online to tonight's program, the fourth annual in our Truman Legacy series, Women Rising. A special thanks to the Martha Jane Phillips Starfield of Interest Fund for partnering with us to create and launch the Women Rising series. Their generosity allows us to better profile the women who found their place on the world stage during the Truman administration, to reflect on their contributions, and to share their stories as a catalyst for promoting women as activists and leaders. There will be an opportunity for Q&A at the end of this evening's program. If you would like to ask a question, please make your way to the aisles at the appropriate time and make sure that your question is a question. As we gather this evening to bring to light the stories of some incredible trailblazing women, I hope you'll allow me to share a few upcoming events where we gladly continue this theme. Tickets are now on sale for the 26th Annual Wild About Harry on April 24th, where the Honorable Kathleen Sebelius will be honored with the Harry S. Truman Legacy of Leadership Award, and will be joined by Melissa Fitzgerald and Mary McCormick, two cast members from The West Wing and authors of the best-selling What's Next? A Backstage Pass to the West Wing, its cast and crew, and its enduring legacy of service. On May 22nd, it is the 75th anniversary of the Freedom to Serve Report, commissioned by President Truman when he signed Executive Order 9981, desegregating the U.S. military. To mark the occasion, we'll be joined by three veterans whose service to our country was positively impacted by Truman's order. They'll discuss those who paved the way for their freedom to serve and how they have paved the way for others. Learn about these events and more at our website, trumanlibraryinstitute.org. In the early 1960s, Truman mused philosophically about his place in history and how he would be treated by historians. He believed that a leader's decisions couldn't be accurately classified as right or wrong until they had been dead 50 years. At least Truman recalled that had been the case with Abraham Lincoln. He concluded, and I quote, "I don't let these things bother me for the simple reason I know that I'm trying to do the right thing, and eventually the facts will come out. I'll probably be holding a conference with St. Peter when that happens." Well, I hope they're both sitting down because, Mr. President, we're here to make sure the facts come out. President Truman's support of women's rights is a lesser-known area of his progressive leadership. In the early years of World War II, Pearl Mesta, a prominent supporter of the Equal Rights Amendment, asked then-Senator Truman for his support. She recalled, "I walked right into his office and found he was for it. He's always for women. He's a wonderful, wonderful man." In 1949, Truman named Mesta U.S. Minister to Luxembourg, the third woman in history to be a chief of mission. The second woman in history to be a chief of mission was Helen Eugenie Moore Anderson. With her appointment, President Truman was also appointing the first woman at the ambassador rank, who, serving in ambassadorships until her retirement in 1968, would become the first woman to sign a treaty and the first woman to sit on the UN Security Council. Now, India Edwards was the first woman to open the inner circles of political power to women within the Democratic Party. In 1948, as executive director of the women's division of the party, she worked tirelessly for Truman's re-election campaign, at a time when it was common knowledge that few people believed Truman would defeat Dewey. During breakfast with the president and first lady on the presidential rail car during the Whistle Stop campaign, Truman said to Edwards, "You know, sometimes, India, I think there are only two people in the United States who really think I'm going to be elected. They're both sitting at this table, and one of them is not my wife." When Truman did defeat Dewey, a staffer came to India and said, "President Truman wants to know what you would like. Do you want to be in the cabinet? What do you want?" As recorded in her oral history at the Truman Library, Edwards responded, "I don't want a thing, but I want a lot of jobs for a lot of women." Largely because of her influence, Truman would appoint more women to top jobs than any preceding president. Georgia Nisi Clark as Treasurer of the United States, Frida Hennick as Federal Communications Commissioner, Anna Rosenberg, the subject of last year's Women Rising, as Assistant Secretary of Defense, Bernita Shelton Matthews as U.S. District Court Judge, and many more. Explaining how she worked to increase the number of women in federal jobs, Edwards recalled, "Sometimes I felt like a ghoul. I'd read the obits, and as soon as a man had died, I'd rush over to the White House and suggest a woman to replace him." Marion McLeod Bethune was a passionate educator and presidential advisor who worked tirelessly for civil rights. Appointed by Harry Truman, Bethune was the only woman of color at the founding conference of the United Nations in 1945. In 1952, she served as President Truman's personal representative at the inauguration of the President of Liberia. Now, in September of 2022, the Truman Library Institute installed a statue of President Truman in the U.S. Capitol as part of the National Statuary Hall collection. 3 months earlier, Bethune became the first Black American to be represented with a state statue in the collection. While there are many reasons the state of Florida chose Bethune as one of their 2 statues, which could be a program in and of itself, there is one reason that's particularly pertinent to tonight's program. During World War II, Bethune was appointed as Special Assistant to the Secretary of War. In that role, she served as a member of the advisory board that created the Women's Auxiliary Army Corps, successfully advocating for the inclusion of Black women, like the 688th Central Postal Directory Battalion. Bethune's advocacy for the 688 and so many others compelled Truman to sign Executive Order 9981, desegregating the military, and the Women's Armed Services Integration Act, enabling women to serve as permanent regular members of the Army, Navy, Marine Corps, and the recently formed Air Force. This paved the way for thousands of women's military careers, but it did nothing to honor those who had served, like Private Romay Davis. It is my pleasure to introduce Eries Mentzer this evening. Mentzer is a U.S. Air Force veteran with more than 25 years of military service. A wife, mother, and self-described status quo challenger, she's persisted as often the first, only, or one of the few Black or female leaders in her formations. She's among an elite collective of military officers trusted to lead an American military base, securing the freedom to serve for more than 42,000 active duty, Guard, Reserve, civilian, and military families at Maxwell Air Force Base in Montgomery, Alabama. Her passion for securing more freedom to serve led her to develop and implement more inclusive policies and practices to excite today's generations to join or stay in the military. Now a veteran and advocate, Aries is featured in the National World War II Museum's film, Our War II, Women in Service. She serves on the board of Operation Lifeline to deliver safe, accessible, and affordable homes for displaced veterans, and it is a true honor to have her on the Truman Library Institute board to inspire rising generations through President Truman's legacy. Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome Eries Mentzer.
Thank you. Good evening. Okay, y'all don't hear me. Good evening. I am so excited to be here tonight, and thank you all for being here tonight. And I want to first thank Cassie for the lovely introduction. I'll be using her at my eulogy. She is the heart and soul of this Women Rising series, an incredible platform to bring forward hidden figures who have shaped America for the better. It allows them to finally be seen, loved, and celebrated. Please give it up for Cassie for leading this for us tonight. I also want to invite all of the Truman team, the TLI team that put this together. Could you please rise and be seen and celebrated? All of those that helped make this possible, they must all be in the back. So just cheer real loud. There's Morgan. So they know how much you appreciate them. And I want to thank our generous sponsors. Because of them, we're able to put on programming like this and connect with all of you. I want to thank President Truman's grandson, Clifton, who I believe is joining us online tonight, our Institute Executive Director, Alex, our board that's all here tonight, as well as the Truman Library and the Institute staffs. Please give them all a round of applause for the great work they do to preserve his legacy. And I want to thank all of you here tonight, as well as those online. You are true champions who continue to show up and persist bringing his legacy forward. Thank you for educating and inspiring so that President Truman can help us perfect our democracy. And I want to thank you all for trusting me to stand with you as we honor trailblazing women. I especially want to thank AARP. What did you think of the video? AARP has done something truly special. They have beautifully preserved the life's journey of Private Ramay Davis. They have ensured that her story, in her words, can be shared with future generations. So thank you, AARP, for all of those listening, for helping to ensure that our rising women's stories remain in the forefront. For 80 years, Miss Davis and the Sheroes of the 688th were hidden figures, almost forgotten. And when President Biden signed the Congressional Gold Medal legislation in 2022, only 6 of the 855 women in the unit were alive to receive their long overdue appreciation from a grateful nation. Only 6. Online tonight is a hero of mine and a true champion. His name is David Goldfein. He's a retired Air Force 4-star general, my previous boss. He persisted to bring Master Sergeant John Chapman the Medal of Honor that he had earned. In his fight, he would often say, "Honor delayed is honor denied," as people tried to delay or disrupt his progress to achieve Master Sergeant Chapman's Medal of Honor. For the 688th, Private Cecile Wilson, sadly, her honor was delayed too long. She passed in 1992 before receiving her love and appreciation from a grateful nation. At this time, I'd like to invite Mr. Harry Harris and Miss Lorraine Harris to please, or Hill, excuse me, to please join us on stage. As they make their way up, their mother was Cecile Wilson. They are here from Kansas. Their mother, Cecile, was the first Black woman to join the Women's Army Corps from Kansas. She was among the 849 women who passed long before being honored with the Congressional Gold Medal. If you walked in tonight and you saw the 688th footlocker, that was Miss Cecile's. And it was not just Miss Cecile who served. Her husband, Kelsey, was a Buffalo soldier. Oops, excuse me. Yes, there we go. If you missed it, that was her footlocker out there in the lobby tonight. Her husband, Kelsey, was a Buffalo soldier. And her son, Harry Hill, on the stage tonight, he is an Army vet, Sergeant First Class, who served in Vietnam. His son also served in the Army. They are truly a family of service. And while we can't bring Miss Cecile back, what we can do tonight is I ask you to please rise and show your appreciation to them for their mother's service.
I'd like to thank you all for this honor, especially the Institute and Aries, although I'm a retired Sergeant First Class, and she's a retired colonel. I'm used to saying Colonel. My brother Billy Hill is watching by video, and he and I have been instrumental in trying to resurrect Mother's image, because we didn't know until the movie came out that she had been part of the 6888. We knew that she had served in Europe, but she never talked about what she did. So I thank the Institute for having this opportunity. Thank you.
Good evening, everyone. Well, I had the pleasure of being married to this man here. Come on up here. And we were watching the movie, the 6888. And as it ended and it showed all the women's names, and I grabbed the remote and I froze it. I said, wait a minute, there's your mother's name. And you know, as he said, she told them that I redirected mail. But once we saw her name up there, we began really digging and came up with everything. So we thank God for this opportunity.
Yes.
For being here tonight. May God bless each and every one of you.
Thank you for all your mother has done to pave our freedom to serve. Growing up, I did not know about the 6888. My heroes were my siblings, my brothers and sisters who are joining us online tonight. I first learned about the 6888 in 2021 when I had the honor of commanding Maxwell Air Force Base in Montgomery, Alabama. There, I met two amazing Americans, Lexi Aldridge and Dr. Mehmet Ali, whose passion is history and who continued to educate me about the histories that made our freedoms possible. To prepare for my Maxwell journey, I decided to read Rosa Parks' autobiography. I learned from her book that she too worked at Maxwell Air Force Base, but during World War II, and I would take command in the 65th year of her bus protest arrest. In World War II, she was a seamstress and a secretary in the base hotel. Her husband Raymond was a barber on the base. Every day they took a segregated bus through Montgomery, but once on Maxwell Air Force Base, they had the freedom to ride. The base had an integrated trolley, and they could sit anywhere they desired. Rosa Parks says in her book, "You might just say Maxwell opened my eyes. It was an alternative to the ugly policies of Jim Crow." And 14 years later, the Montgomery bus boycott, Maxwell had inspired her. With the research and persistence of the Maxwell team, on 1 December 2020, the 65th anniversary of Rosa Parks' arrest, we unveiled the Rosa Parks opening eye sculpture on Maxwell Air Force Base. It looks like this. Thank you. It is located in the spot where she once worked. Each piece is made to look like a rifle standing up because she was a weapon for change. You can't tell it's her face until you are centered on it. It evolves as you approach it, just as she evolved in her lifetime as an activist. It's made of black powder-coated steel, a highly durable material in high contrast against its natural background, just like you have to be to challenge the status quo. The art was designed on a 3D printer by a Maxwell airman who served in the same type of squadron Rosa Parks did. He cut out each piece on the fabrication machines we use to fix our C-130s. The sculpture is a marker to inspire the idea that if a woman of little position and little power can change our nation for the better, We all can. This got me curious. What other freedoms were formed on Maxwell Air Force Base? My husband showed me a story that he had found about Lieutenant Sharon Frontiero. He found this story in the men's room, not the men's room you're thinking. It's actually an online forum for male military spouses around the world to connect and support each other because they only make about 20% of our population in the military. In this men's room, he learned that in 1969, Lieutenant Frontiero worked at Maxwell Air Force Base. She got married and went to get benefits for her husband like all the airmen received for their wives. The Department of Defense would not give her the same pay that they give married men. Why? Because the department's policy at the time said men automatically get extra pay for their wives, but women must prove that their husbands are more than 50% dependent on them to get the same pay. So, Lieutenant Frontiero did not get mad. She got a lawyer. Her lawyer was ACLU lawyer. Anybody guess? Ruth Bader Ginsburg. And she took Sharon's case, Frontiero v. Richardson, Richardson being the Secretary of Defense at the time, all the way to the Supreme Court. It was the first case RBG had ever argued before the Supreme Court, and she won. Her win sent the foundation for gender pay equality cases going forward. All because this lieutenant right here had the courage and the confidence to defiantly say no and fight for her rights. About 50 years after Lieutenant Frontiero equalized pay for all armed forces women, we added a second marker to inspire at Maxwell Air Force Base for Lieutenant Frontiero. It's made of granite steps leading into the Maxwell Air Force Base Hospital where she had once worked. Granite because it solidifies under heavy pressure. The material is highly resistant to heat because challenging the status quo and suing the Secretary of Defense, it might just come with a little bit of heat. Each granite step highlighted a step that Lieutenant Frontiero took for equal pay. We unveiled the steps on Military Spouse Appreciation Day, which generally highlights female military spouses, but we wanted to highlight her and her spouse. Although this honor was delayed some 50 years from when Sharon Frontiero took that first brave step, she joined us online that day to unveil the steps and receive a Commander's Public Service Award. And tonight, she joins us online from Boston. So please extend your applause. Hi, Sharon. For Ms. Sharon Frontiero Cohen. Thank you, Ms. Sharon, for paving our freedom to serve. So as my Maxwell team and I persisted through COVID, privatized housing problems, childcare shortages, tornadoes, deployments, death, and more, I continued to look for stories to inspire through Dr. Ali and Lexi Aldridge. One day, as Lexi and I are walking through the library on base, she shared a picture that looked like this of a gorgeous woman in her World War II uniform. Lexi tells me her story of service and finishes with, and now she is 101 and works right downtown at the Winn-Dixie. That was my reaction. I was like, let's go meet her. So a few days later, Mr. May and her longtime friend and caregiver, Stacia Robinson, came to Maxwell Air Force Base to meet us. She wanted to meet the woman commanding her base. She was a vibrant force, fierce and resolute. Her mind was so crisp, every word intriguing, every memory so vivid. You wanted to listen to her stories all day. She was born in 1919. She shared stories of growing up in rural Virginia, but leaving because she was denied an education where she lived. After she graduated high school in Washington, D.C., she earned her master's degree in education at New York University, and then worked for the U.S. Mint in Washington, D.C., a moment that would soon come full circle for her. From there, she signed up for World War II. Why? Because her 5 brothers had all gone off to war. Her brother Thomas served in Hawaii working with the USO. Her brother August served in the Army. Her brother Preston served in the Navy. Her brother Purcell was a Marine, a Montford Point Marine, and so was her brother Stansbury. She talked of training in Iowa to learn military culture in an all-black, all-female unit, later called the 6888. She talked of her first time on a ship, her excitement crossing the ocean, navigating massive waves and torpedoes from enemy boats on her way from America to England. She spoke of being one of the few to handle all the turbulence on the ship and then caring for all of the other women who fell sick on the journey. She spoke of how cold and miserable England was and how the people matched the weather. She talked of how the French welcomed her, hosted her for meals, taught her how to drape fabric and to design fashion. How, although the American units serving there were segregated, the French were fully integrated. She felt welcomed and belonged. They welcomed her with open arms. She shared her great love of the outdoors and how she fought for a duty outside, so she became a driver. She became a driver, one that could transport the officers around England and France, while at the same time driving trucks to transport the troops to their missions. She said it gave her the opportunity to learn and experience the country as much as possible by driving vehicles. She spoke of the opportunities of war, how there were not enough men to fill the duties. So this gave women a chance to serve in places they may never get to and in roles that had not yet been open to them. And she shared the freedom she felt as a driver in France, freedoms denied to her as an American citizen at home. She shared how the women made their own community and the pride they felt being trusted with a critical American mission, how dedicated the women were to prove they could get the job done. 17 million pieces of mail stacked in warehouses, some for up to 3 years. Some Christmas packages being eaten by rats. Many with the name John. Lots of Johns in World War II. Which letter goes with which John? And the 6888 had to figure it out because morale on the home front and on the front lines was declining. Having been deployed, I can tell you firsthand just how much a package means from home. Even with access to FaceTime and email and WhatsApp today, there is something truly special about a handwritten note from a loved one or a personalized package. In fact, for the 4 weeks that I was at field training to become an Air Force officer, some 30 years ago, my mom wrote me a letter every single day. Some little Garfield stationery. It's like, don't quit. You can't move back home. But I still cherish them. Our nation thought it would take the 6888 6 or more months to get the job done. They did it in just 3. Yes, 3 months. Yeah, make some noise for that. That is amazing. Mr. May and the 6888 delivered 17 million pieces of mail to more than 7 million service members, reconnecting families and restoring hope to the front lines so that democracy could win. After the war, Mr. May returned home. There were no parades, no fanfare, no awards or excitement, no love and appreciation from a grateful nation. She and the 6888 simply faded back into society, For many, not even their families knew of their service. Miss Ramey went to fashion school on her GI Bill in New York, the Trappenhagen School. She worked for 30 years in the fashion industry in New York, modeling and then designing children's clothes. She relocated to Alabama with her beloved husband, Jerry Davis, where he was from. She lived out her years there as a taxidermist, in real estate, with a vending machine business, and as a deacon in her church. When she got to her 70s, she decided to earn her black belt. She was not a woman to sit still or be messed with. And then, in her 80s, she began sharing her time at the local Winn-Dixie in Alabama. Why? Because she wanted something to do. She carved out her own position. She greeted shoppers, and in her words, I kept the store orderly. For her 100th birthday, Winn-Dixie honored her like a queen, and also for her 101st, her 2nd, and her 3rd. They established the Ramey Davis Belonging and Inclusion Grant. The grant to date has paid over 100 grants and more than $1 million to organizations that work to address health and education disparities and food insecurity, all in the name of Ramey Davis. It's why I only shop at Winn-Dixie. In March of 2022, Ms. Ramey invited me over to her house, and she said, "Baby, the president's going to give me the Congressional Gold Medal, but I'm not going to Washington, D.C. You are going to present it. Get it together." And that is exactly how Ms. Ramey would state her wishes. In partnership with the Montgomery Area Chamber of Commerce, we organized a grand celebration for her Congressional Gold Medal recognition. We chose 26 July, the anniversary of President Truman's Executive Order 9981 that desegregated the military, an order that had been paved by the exemplary service of Black Americans in World War II, an order paved by Miss Ramey and the 6888. The Buffalo Soldier Riders established a grand motorcade to escort her through the city to Montgomery's City Hall. Airmen and soldiers from the base and community lined under grand flags hoisted by the Montgomery Fire Department to welcome her to her event. She entered through an honor cordon, an honor that is generally reserved for our most distinguished. When she had returned from war, she told me when we first met that her footlocker with all of her uniforms had been stolen. This invoked a very deep sadness for her. She was so proud of her military service. She missed her uniforms. So, with the help of 2 amazing airmen, Denise Kester and Ian Mangum, we found a complete World War II uniform, her medals, and a footlocker, and created this shadow box to display her Congressional Gold Medal certificate. Now, she did not take her eyes off that from the moment we presented it to her until that footlocker was safely, securely in her living room. And every time I came over, she says, "Have you seen my footlocker?" It was an incredible moment of pride for her. She was determined to never lose her uniforms again. Video tributes poured in. Lieutenant General retired Gwen Bingham, one of the highest-ranking Black women in Army logistics, the same type of community where where Ramey Davis had served. Lieutenant General retired Stacey Harris, who has achieved the highest rank of any Black woman in the Air Force and been a fierce champion for our Tuskegee Airmen. She is online with us tonight and joining this program. These generals long helped me and other women see ourselves at higher levels in our service. If you cannot be it, you cannot see it. Their paths were paved by Ramey Davis, and today they pave more paths for others to follow. At the conclusion of the ceremony, Ms. Ramey said, I never thought anyone would care this much about me, about my service. To us, she waited 80 years to be seen, loved, and celebrated by a grateful nation. As we honored her, we knew we were also honoring all of the women of the 688th who passed before they received their flowers. One thing was missing that day: Miss Remay's actual gold medal. You see, it takes time, about 12 to 18 months, for the U.S. Mint, a place Miss Remay worked before she went to war, to create a medal once the legislation is approved. But as it took 80 years to get to this recognition, and with only 6 women remaining, time was not on our side. So we decided to do everything we could for Miss Remay to feel loved and appreciated, while we hoped she would live to hold her medal. In September of 2022, at the annual ASALA convention, an organization who founded and championed Black History Month, the documentary, The 688th, by retired Colonel Edna Cummings, the woman who has persisted to bring these stories forward and will be here in May, and helped get the legislation approved. Her documentary, along with James, the producer, and he's the gentleman in the photo, that was shown at the annual convention. And Miss Remay sat there and told her story of service and answered questions to a roaring, standing ovation. The legislation was possible thanks to Kansas. Your Senator, Jerry Moran, is the one who sponsored the 688th legislation. In 2023, at This Is Alabama, Top 50 Women Who Shaped the State, we nominated Miss Remay, and she received their very first Lifetime Achievement Award. When I went to this event, I brought along a Special Operations Airman, Kate Hewlett, and the Space Guardian, Joan Thompson. It's important to show women, other women, being seen and celebrated. And now, both Kate and Joan are also Miss Remay's storytellers. On Veterans Day 2023, Miss Remay's hologram was unveiled at the National World War II Museum. Now you can go and interact with Remay and hear firsthand about her service. A special thanks to the museum's curator, Kim Guys, who interviewed women around the force and set up for thousands of questions to be asked of Miss Remay and several women from World War II. Now you can see not just Remay, but interact directly with World War II women and see the film Our War II that celebrates their service. The best moment on the right, when Miss Remay asked herself questions and then challenged herself on the, that's not right. That's not right. And so I have a beautiful video of that I'm happy to show you after this. For her 103rd and 104th birthdays, the community threw grand celebrations. We were at a Mexican restaurant where she was drinking top shelf margaritas. Many of them, more than me. I decided maybe that's the key to a long life well lived. We also honored her with commendations from the Secretary of Veterans Affairs. For that event, I brought along a lieutenant by the name of Lauren. Lieutenant's long been my mentee, and she now serves in the Air Force. Again, it's important for our young women to see women who have paved their path to service be seen and celebrated. And now Lauren is her storyteller, too. In 2024, Miss Remay received her brother Purcell Johnson's Congressional Gold Medal for his World War II service as a Montford Point Marine. As she accepted the medal for her brother, she said, "I hope I live to hold my own." Sadly, Miss Remay had her final homecoming in June of 2024 at 104. Yeah. My son and I stood with her family at the Fort Mitchell National Cemetery in Alabama. We presented a presidential letter and rendered a final salute from a grateful nation. Mr. May now lives on through all of us, and now only 2 of the 6888 remain. Fanny McClendon, Arizona, 104. Anna Mae Robertson, Wisconsin, 101. Please give them your love and appreciation. They now represent and stand for the 855 women of the 6888. But thanks to Commander Carlton Philpott, right here from Kansas, the names of the women of the 6888 are etched on the 6888 Central Postal Battalion Monument at the Buffalo Soldier Military Park, right up the road in Fort Leavenworth, Kansas. Yeah, please give it up, Commander Philpott. Tyler Perry's 6888 movie, which came out in December on Netflix, honors Mr. May and all of the women of the 6888. It's how Mr. Hill was able to know more of his mom's service. Blair Underwood is currently producing the 6888 musical. Order your tickets now. And John Monsky honors the 6888 in his production, The Eyes of the World from D-Day to VE Day. You can see it online. Steve Ambrose hosts a 6888 tour in France and England. You too can walk in the steps of the 6888. But your ship's not going to evade torpedoes like they did, but it's still a great experience. In April, we will stand with Mr. May's family as the Speaker of the House finally presents the 6888 their Congressional Gold Medals, 80 years after their World War II service. Online tonight is Mr. May's niece, Lydia, out in California. Hi, Lydia. Mr. May's brother and Lydia's father was a Montford Point Marine and a Congressional Gold Medal recipient. This is him in the photo, and he's also online. Please show your appreciation for Private First Class Stansberry Johnson, who's joining us tonight. Hi, Mr. Stansberry. In the Johnson family of 6 kids, all 6 served in World War II. And Ramey, Purcell, and Stansberry, Mr. Stansberry joining us online, all earned a Congressional Gold Medal. How about that family? That's some good genes. Mr. Stansberry, thank you and your family for paving our freedom to serve. You heard Ms. Ramey's final words in the opening video tonight. She said, "When an emergency occurs, it's everyone's emergency. Do not separate us because of black or white." She said, "I will always cherish the idea that the government allowed women to be participants. If it hadn't, I don't think we would have won the war." Probably not. Today, as varying definitions of America and American can divide, with historic low military recruiting and retention, and pacing adversaries challenging global world order and peace. We cannot wait for an emergency, not another Pearl Harbor or 9/11 or some other crisis. We need all of America's talent for democracy to win. We need women to rise. Charity Adams, the commander of the 6888, reflected of her command in her book, One Woman's Army. She said, "During World War II, women in service were often subjected to ridicule and disrespect, even as they performed more than satisfactorily. Each year, the number of people who shared the accomplishments lessen. Today, there's only 2. In another generation, young Black women who join the military will have scant record of their predecessors who fought on the 2 fronts of discrimination, segregation and a reluctant acceptance by males. The laws of the land have moved forward, have moved towards desegregation. Only attitudinal changes and opportunity will assure integration. My fellow Americans, as hidden figures serving today continue to trailblaze and persist for attitudinal changes and opportunities, I ask, when you see a leading lady and thank her for her service, lean in and learn her story. Don't allow it to be hidden. Celebrate it. Be her true champion. And launch her from a hidden figure to an honored freedom fighter, just like we've now launched, 80 years later, the 6888. Just like we did tonight for Miss Wilson, Miss Frontiero, Miss Davis. Make this upcoming May 22nd, 2025, the 75th anniversary of the freedom to serve, President Truman's founding ideals of equal treatment and opportunity. Not a moment, but a movement. President Truman has shown all of us the way. Now it's up to us to help secure women rising the freedom to serve. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you, Kansas City. You have been true champions. And I'm so grateful that our Hill family is here tonight, and I hope they will also entertain some questions. Thank you, Mr. Hill, Mrs. Hill. Morgan.
We do have time for some questions. Feel free to line up behind either of the microphones. And for our folks watching online, you can type your questions in the chat, and I will ask them in the microphone.
Good evening.
Oh, if you would just indulge me a moment, because I really don't have a question, but today happens to be my birthday.
Ah.
My mother.
Come up.
My mother, Mary.
Come up so the folks online can see you too.
She obviously was a Black woman, but she was a whack and served in Paris.
Tell us her name.
Bob Schultz. Oh.
Okay.
So that's my mother in her uniform.
What's her name?
Mary. Mary Fett. So I thought I'd have to come today and bring this picture.
Tell us her story.
Oh, well, I told a few people. She was the youngest of 3. Her 2 brothers, for some reason, weren't eligible. I don't know why. One was quite a good athlete in high school. But she's in South Bend, bored to tears, working in some office. So she said, I think I'll join the Army. Her parents were English, by the way. And so she did. And she went to Des Moines, I think, for basic. She ended up in Daytona Beach, on the beach. She taught judo, because she was quite the tomboy, to self-defense. She said she was 1 page ahead in the book of the class. But then eventually she ended up over in Paris doing, telephone operator was one thing. And so anyway, she died in 2008. And she's buried. Met my father, he was in combat in World War II. Met my father at Fort Belvoir when they were both accidentally there for training. And and they got married after the war. I'm obviously a baby boomer. And they're buried next to each other at Abraham Lincoln National Cemetery, which is in Joliet, Illinois. And she gets her own, she's not like Sergeant so-and-so and his wife. Oh no, she has her own separate place. So anyway, just wanted to say that, but hopefully no one will forget. Corporal, I guess, yeah. At the time. She had the same jacket, but it's in a museum in our hometown.
Lovely. Thank
The
you
one
for
that
sharing
showed
that.
me.
Yeah. And can we give him a happy birthday?
This happens. The lady that 78 years ago. No.
Met him tonight.
She helped me out.
Buddy, do you have a question? My question is if all the women veterans would stand who are in the crowd tonight, and we also have the commander of the American Legion with us. If you want to join, see her.
Where is our commander of the American Legion?
Her name is Kathy.
Kathy, thank you. Thank you for bringing women together, for bringing veterans together, and for your service. Thank you. Every woman's story matters, and I encourage you to share your stories and preserve them for future generations at the Women's Memorial in Washington, D.C.
I was wondering if you're prepared to speak about the living conditions for the 6888. Would you tell us a bit about that?
Sure. Absolutely. Thank you for your question. Tell us your name.
Oh, I'm Catherine Snow.
We want to make sure we celebrate everybody. Miss Catherine Snow, thank you for your question. The living conditions. So the women got there, and they really had to create their own community. They set up their own hairdresser. They, kind of really built everything out for themselves. The condition of the property that they received to work out of was not ideal. It required a lot of bringing it up, really cleaning, and really setting it up so that they could be successful. But they just created their own community because that's what women do, right? When we get in tough situations, we figure it out. And that's what the women of the 6888 did. And I see you nodding. Do you want to add on?
I tried to, I don't know if you got it or not, but I have a picture of my mother actually cleaning or taking part in cleaning the building in Birmingham, England. So they did have to do a lot of work.
And in those conditions, if you can imagine just hangars lined up, filled to the brim with mail, and just a dilapidated building to work out of. They just got there, and one of the things I love about it is Charity Adams, who was the commander of the 6888th, she did not get her orders until much later. Generally when you're the commander of a unit, you get your orders, and this is what you're charged to do. Her orders came later, I think actually maybe even after the war, her orders finally showed up. But she just decided, I'm just going to take command and do what needs to be done. And I think that's a great message for all of us, right? We know what needs to be done, the work that is out there. Let's just take command. Let's just get it done. This is easy. No more questions. Trying to get to the hors d'oeuvres. I know. Yes, sir. Hi, just tell us your name and your question.
I'm Anthony Johnson. I'm a retired 06 myself, but my question is relative to the administration's policy toward DEI subjects today. Have you noticed any impact on the monuments for Rosa Parks or Lieutenant Frontiero, is that her name? Frontiero, or the 6888 at Leavenworth? Have you noticed the impact of that?
I have not. I'm not aware of any impact to those right now, but I do want to share that when we did the Rosa Parks Memorial, sculpture, which I encourage all of you to go visit at Maxwell Air Force Base in Montgomery, Alabama, as well as the Sharon Frontiero Steps. The Rosa Parks specifically, the community loved that sculpture so much that they paid for an exact duplicate of the sculpture, and they put it in the spot in Montgomery, Alabama, where she was arrested. So if, that sculpture on base, which it's in concrete, so it's really hard to take down, but if it does not persist, there's an exact duplicate. And the young man, Ian Mangum, he's the one that designed it, had really not done a sculpture of that magnitude before. That was his first, all envisioned on his 3D printer. He did the second one as well, and we unveiled it the year following with a lovely gentleman by the name of Fred Gray, who was Rosa Parks' attorney. And so we got to meet members of her family online, and it was just really great. And what I love about it is, we talked about how she would take the segregated bus into through the city of Montgomery, and then once on Maxwell was the integrated trolley, so there was that fence line that divided. And now that you have the two sculptures, the community calls it the twin sculptures, because it shows the powerful relation the powerful things that can happen when a base and a community are aligned and come together. So my hope is that these things remain, because they're not Black history, they're not women's history, they're American history. And these stories need to continue. So all Americans can see themselves in our service and be excited to join and help us should we ever come to World War III. Sir, tell us your name and your question.
I'm James Dickerson. Thanks for coming. My sister just retired Thursday with 41 years of military and civilian government service.
Excellent. Give her a round of applause. What's your sister's name?
But, you know, when she was in the military, that's when they allowed women to go into combat arms so they could actually be generals. And I'd like for you to comment about the opening up for women to actually get the real leadership positions.
Absolutely. Thank you for your question and for your sister's service. You know, one of the things that I would say is that that I love about my fellow sisters in service is that they often don't wait to be asked. When they see a duty, they go and they do it. There are at times, and if you look at Sharon Fontiero, and I just wish she could be here in the room to celebrate with all of you, and so she could feel your love and appreciation, but you know, she was just like, these policies are not right, I'm gonna fight to change them. And I could tell you story after story of women that I've had the privilege and honor to serve with who just have done it. They have to teach the institution how to treat us. There's a lot of things that may be male-centric practices or provisions that have, you know, really limited some of our ability to rise. And we just take that on and we try and demonstrate how, you know, women are such incredible, valuable members of our force, and having those different viewpoints and experiences, beliefs, biologies, and biographies in the room really expands our perspective and worldview when we're solving complex problems. So if we can just remove some of the barriers that prevent them from being at the table, being in the room, fully contributing their talents, and allowing them to rise to their highest potential, we would have such a much more strengthened military force. And so, you know, thank you. So for all the ladies out there that may be feeling like hidden figures, whether you're in national security or another sector, right? Just keep doing the hard work. That's what the 688 did. They did it. Right? They just did the hard work. And 80 years later, we recognize them. And for some, recognition, you know, may never come. But that doesn't mean the work that needs to happen isn't important and that we're not the right people to do it. So keep persisting and then do what you can to teach the institution how it needs to adjust policies, practices, laws to ensure that we can continue to rise. Yes, ma'am. Tell us your name.
My name is Linda Diamond. I'm asking this question on behalf of my friend Vicki Newman, an Air Force veteran. Can't talk right now. You've partly addressed this, and it's been mentioned, but specifically, do you have ideas about what we can do to protect memorials, such as the Rosa Parks Memorial at Maxwell Air Force Base, under the current regime that seeks to eliminate our American history? Thank you.
That's a great question. Thank you for your question, and hope you feel better. And you were military as well, so thank you for your service. I think we have to, you know, I didn't, when we put up the Rosa Parks sculpture, we just did it, right? And then we did the Sharon Fontiero, and then there's a couple of other things that we have done and are working now to continue to do. And so I think that we just have to keep, you know, telling these stories and explaining why they're important parts of our American history, and then come together and work to make sure that they continue. You know, I haven't had a chance to get up to Fort Leavenworth and see the beautiful sculpture that Commander Carlton Philpott put up there. He's also done one for the Buffalo Soldiers. And so he is a, you know, retired Navy commander who just saw this gap of stories not being told. And then he organized, he raised funds, he got awareness out there, he just did the work to bring these forward. Nobody said, oh, you are in charge of this and let's do it. He's like, no, it needs to be done, so I'm going to do it. So I think that's what we need to do. And if we see that things that are out there, may not persist or the story may not continue, find another way to tell it, And so I'm so grateful for our civic leaders from Montgomery, Alabama, and Mayor Reed, the mayor, who helped us get that twin sculpture downtown. For one, that everybody can get on base, right? So now it allows community to see something that, and know the story of her connection on Maxwell Air Force Base. But then it'll also be there should the other one not persist. But even if if we see that things are not continuing, we still have to be the storytellers. That's why I kept taking young service members with me as we did these events to honor Ramey, because for generations, and I think of my mom, I think of my grandmothers, our stories of women often were passed down through generations, right? They weren't captured and concreted the way some of them are today. And so we can't stop passing on those stories, following the traditions of our elders, and telling these stories down to the next generation. Because when they get in tough moments, they need to understand, what has happened to pave the freedoms we have today, who showed up and who did that. And I think that will strengthen them so they won't see setbacks, Instead, they'll maybe see this is just a setup for my next greatest level of success. And they can thrive off these stories. That's why we call them markers to inspire, because we want people to sit on that bench, in front of the Rosa Parks sculpture. And in those hard moments, like I did as a commander, think, people before me persisted through so much more. I can rise through this too. And so let's just come together as a community. Let's keep telling these stories, and let's champion and help people understand why keeping these markers up, keeping these statues there, telling these stories is so critical to our democracy. Yeah. I feel like you just want me to walk back and forth.
One last question this evening.
Hi, tell us your name.
I'm Patty Mack, and thank you for your storytelling.
Thank you.
And that's my question for you is, you were a commander of a base, and I think you were one of those women that just saw it and just did it. Would you mind sharing a snapshot of your story as well?
Yes, thank you for your question. And I'm just looking at Morgan's side. I go, we don't have that much time. So I'll keep it short, and I will just tell you that I am a military brat. My father was in the Navy. He flew P-3s, and I spent my whole life growing up moving from coast to coast. I did not want to join the military, specifically for some experiences I had growing up with my father, and that were places I never wanted to return to, and that we had during his military service. But the military became a way to pay for college. I was offered a full-ride ROTC scholarship, University of Nebraska, hey, Debt 70, and I want to give a special shout out to Evelyn Ligon. She's online tonight. I was actually failing out of ROTC, and Evelyn was an upperclassman, and she saw me failing, bad uniform, couldn't march, couldn't speak the language, and she said, come over to my house, a couple hours before our ROTC classes. And I was like, oh, okay. So I go over there, and she taught me how to wear the uniform, how to march, how to adjust to the culture. I'm going to brag on Evelyn for a minute. Evelyn used to always say, don't go it alone, and that's why she reached over and she helped me. And Evelyn is the granddaughter of Evelyn T. Butts. And she was the wife of a veteran who couldn't get access to vote in Virginia. So she overturned the poll tax so that her and her community could be able to vote. Her name's Evelyn T. Butts. And her granddaughter was the one that helped me actually graduate and get through ROTC. So to Evelyn out there, I love you and your family, and thank you for helping me on my rise. Give it up for Evelyn. Just amazing generations of women in that family, and I'm so grateful to have her and so many incredible women on my journey. My first Air Force sponsor is on the line tonight. Her name is Denise Kerr. She didn't know that when they made her my first sponsor when I came in the Air Force, that it was for life. And I'm excited because I get to actually go and retire her this summer. So she will finish her Air Force service. So please give it up for Denise, because she's had an amazing career. But military, it's been a great opportunity, travel the world. It has been, I met and married a man who could cook. Hi, Eddie, he's online tonight. So if you're looking for a man, the military is a great place. I have just had so many incredible experiences. I had some difficult experiences, but every one of those difficult experiences, I think, strengthened me to do what I'm able to do today, right? Like, you get to a point where you're pushing and things get hard, and you can either choose to set back, to plateau, or to go forward. And, I just kept thinking, like, this moment is just strengthening me, like a video game, right? My son's always gaming. Make sure your French homework's done. He's always gaming and, trying to get to that next level in the game, right? And none of us are going to get to that next level or ever reach our highest potential and know what we can truly contribute if we don't go through some of these hard times. And so if you're out there and you're going through a hard time, just know that I often ask myself when those things happen, not why is this happening to me, but why is this happening for me, and how am I going to come out of this even better and more ready to take on whatever next greatness is coming my way. So I encourage you to do the same. Now I'm getting the hook.
Aries, thank you on behalf of the Truman Library Institute, on behalf of our audience tonight, for sharing all of the wonderful stories that you did.
Please give it up for Mr. Hill and Mrs. Hill. Thank you. And if you didn't get a chance, please go and see their mother's Foot Locker out in the lobby. Thank you.
Thank you all, and I thank